Pablo Escobar, it's a name we've rather forgotten now, isn't it? A name known to many as the world's most notorious, infamous drug lord. In a new book, however, his firstborn son tells his own story. Roberto Sendoya Escobar was rescued as a baby following a shootout in which his mother died. Adopted by an MI6 agent, he never knew his true identity until he was 24. I mean, those are the ingredients already of a quite extraordinary story that have been documented by Roberto, who joins us now to talk about the book. Welcome to you, Roberto. Thanks ever so much for joining us today. Surrounded by some of the artworks that now occupy you. You're a fine art artist, aren't you? But you've found time to write this book. I scarcely know where to begin. Let's start at the beginning, when you were a baby, not even a young child. You were a baby. And this is what, the mid-60s? Tell us what happened.
So obviously, as a child, baby, you don't remember all these things. What we're actually talking about here is a situation where later on, my adopted father, the MI6 agent, has to tell me who I am, and that is obviously a dreadful shock to me. And I asked him what these vague, nightmare memories were that I was experiencing as a baby, and described them to him. And then he obviously came clean with what had happened to me.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in the mid-60s, he wasn't the sort of colossus of the crime world that he became. I mean, this was somebody who, yeah.
Yeah, so effectively, Colombia was full of gangs, similar to gangs we have today in inner cities, really. And a young Pablo Escobar was a member of one of these gangs, and unfortunately for them, they decided to take it upon themselves to rob one of the armored cars of the De La Rue operation in Colombia, which led to a special forces raid on the hideout of the gang, where they got the money back. Unfortunately, there was a young lady in the back room when she'd copped a bullet, and she was only 14, and there was a baby in the cot. And this is all the stuff that Dad told me later. And he was with her when she died, and he promised to look after her baby boy. And the boy was Roberto Sendoya Escobar. But, I didn't know any of this really until I was much older.
Yeah, and tell us about the involvement of the MI6 agent who was working with Colombian Special Forces, because, he could have completed his operation and just moved on.
Yes, so effectively, he's got two jobs. One, he's managing director of Tomos de la Rue, Colombia. They're printing banknotes and transporting the money in armored car service business, but that turns out to be his sort of cover life story. And actually, he's doing a secret operation and working with Manuel Noriega, who was working with the CIA at the time before he became military dictator of Panama. And they're working on this operation to infiltrate these gangs. And it turns out that they sort of make one of the chaps in one of these gangs the king, as it were. Something that they do all around the world, with Saddam Hussein and all this sort. They did it then. And it turns out that, in fact, this guy also turned out to be my real brother. But there's a lot of intrigue and interest in the book that will tell you how all this came about.
And he did become a kind of kingpin. I mean, not just any kingpin. I mean, 80% at one stage, it's reported, 80% of the world's global trade in cocaine was organised by Pablo Escobar.
Yes, yes. I mean, it's one thing selling the cocaine, then you get all the money, and it's all in dollars, and what do you do with that, this guy's a hoodlum with no education, and how does he become the world's greatest drug lord? Narcos starts off with the assumption that he's a drug dealer and successful and all the rest of it. But my story tells the world how it all began and how this thug got help so that he did become that great, drug lord that he's been portrayed as in the movies.
You say thug. I mean, clearly a certain degree of brutality must be required, to prosecute a criminal career to the extent which, in quotes, successfully he did. I wonder if opportunities and circumstances had been different, whether he may have been a successful businessman or something else, or whether he was just a very bad man.
No, well, I mean, it is all about nature and nurture, and there's no doubt that the opportunities arose for him, and he was helped by these grown-ups, if you like, and I won't say Pat Whitcomb didn't help him to a certain degree, so they could infiltrate the businesses they wanted to track, of course, and that's part of the secret operation. And these agents do have to cross the line to get him into these organizations. But you're right in saying that, it is possible you go one way or the other. And interesting enough, as you can see, I'm an artist for my work. Interesting enough, that although my half brother and I don't know each other, and frankly we don't get on very well either, the fact is that we've grown up completely separate lives, and we both end up doing drawing for a living. So that was quite interesting. So it just goes to show what you're saying is right. It is possible. You go left or
Yeah.
right, and you just don't know which way you're going to end up.
There's a lot of nature in there to get along with the nurture, isn't there? And now
Yes.
the MI6 agent takes you under his wing. You go to an English school for a while. You get set on this completely different trajectory. Pablo Escobar tried to make contact with you. Is that correct?
Yes, well, no, contact was made by my adopted father, and all the complicated business arrangements that are discussed in the book. Far too long to go into at the moment, but the book will describe to you how it is they infiltrated the cartels and how they got the trust of this one chap. And they used to take me to Medellin, and I remember it as clear as day, and I used to have to sit next to him, and, he would talk to me and stuff like that. I remember his smell of cologne and hashish and, all that sort of stuff. But, yeah, we did used to have to go and see him, or have to. I was told to go and see him, and I was flanked by my bodyguards. I felt okay, but I was confused, and I didn't know what was going on. I was a very young child, and these were just sort of things that I had to do because the grown-ups told me to do it.
Yeah.
But as you rightly say, I got settled in England, and then later I was told what this was all about.
And do you remember, Roberto, when you heard that he'd been killed in this shootout in, what was it, 1993?
Yes, yes. So 93 was a very bad year for me. My wife died of cancer, unfortunately, and left me with the two kids. And my father died. My adopted father had been to Karachi on BCCI business, bringing down that outfit and tracking money from the cartels. And it's very complicated. But effectively, 93 was a terrible year. And at the end of the year, I'm watching the news in sunny Walton-on-Thames in Surrey, and I see that the guy that my dad had been telling me about has been shot in the head, and so yes, very frightening. And I spiraled after that into a very bad period of depression, and this is why it took me over 20 years to write this book.
I tell you what, Roberto, people write books with about 1% of the interest value of your life story that you tell us, or are going to be telling us in this book. Absolutely incredible. Just one final thought. I know you as an artist, you're known as Philip Whitcomb. Which name do you prefer to go by?
Yeah.
One that tells the story of your life, or that?
Yes, I've got, it's basically I've got two lives and two names. It's not a problem. I've been called a lot worse than Philip Whitcomb in my time.
Well, we very much appreciate you joining us today with your story. Thanks ever so much. Thanks a lot.